there may be no more divisive issue in our country than the decades-long battle over the sanctity of human life. Indeed, many Americans regard this as the defining issue of our times. In Congress, our pro-life caucus and Republican conference members work hard every day to advance measures to protect more children in the womb because they are the most vulnerable and threatened lives in our society. We do this work because we share the same deep and abiding conviction that so many of the founders of this extraordinary nation did about the sanctity of human life. It is that seminal conviction, of course, that is recorded in the very birth certificate of our nation, the Declaration of Independence, and has come to be known as our nation's creed. We know the language well. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We believe, as the founders articulated, that every single human life is sacred because that value is given to us not by the state, but by our Creator, in whose image all of us are made. Because of this, every single human life has inestimable dignity and value, and our value is not related in any way to the color of our skin, our zip code, or socioeconomic status, our level of talent or education, or what we can contribute to society. Our value is inherent because it is given to us by our Creator. During the first 2 centuries of our republic, most Americans accepted and revered the biblical truths that every human being is fearfully and wonderfully made and personally known by our Creator, God, even before they were formed in their mother's womb. The rejection of that essential truth has now led to the murder of more than 60 million innocent preborn children since 1973's Roe v. Wade. What an unspeakable tragedy this is. In addition to the deeply held conviction about the lives of the unborn, millions of conscientious Americans also support pro-life legislation and reasonable restrictions on the abortion practice because it is pro-women to do so. The abortion industry itself presents very real dangers for millions who are in difficult circumstances. I bring firsthand knowledge of those dangers to this hearing today. Prior to my election to Congress, I spent a good portion of my 20-year legal career in the courts defending common sense pro-life legislation when those laws were challenged, and litigating to protect vulnerable women who were irreparably harmed by the notorious practices of the abortion industry. In fact, I was co-counsel in the trial of one of the cases that the chairman's hearing memo today laments was upheld by the Fifth Circuit in 2018. Over the course of my career, we uncovered and made public shocking evidence, including the documented use of rusted surgical instruments, filthy and dangerous conditions in the clinics, unlicensed doctors engaging in physical and emotional abuse of patients, falsified health records, and so much more. I've spent many hours with and conducted extraordinary depositions of abortion providers, some of whom boasted about personally performing tens of thousands of abortions each. Their callous disregard for the barbarism of their practice and the countless precious lives they terminated merely for cash was always stunning to me. To so many of these abortion providers, women are merely objects and a source of revenue, and state health and safety regulations put in place to protect those vulnerable women are mere nuisances to be blatantly ignored. There is no one in this room that can tell me otherwise, because I have seen and heard and documented all this in court records myself. Today, we also have indisputable scientific evidence in advanced medical technology like 4D ultrasounds that clearly affirm the humanity of every unborn child. We know that when a human sperm meets and fertilizes a human egg, at the moment of conception, there becomes an unborn, living, genetically distinct, and biologically self-directed human being. That is an uncontroversial statement among embryologists and those who practice modern medicine generally. In other words, there is no such thing as a potential human being. There are only human beings from the moment of conception. But today we see lawyers and politicians and activists straining logic and language past the breaking point for political reasons. They do their very best to avoid phrases like unborn child and try to defend and deny the gruesome reality of abortion, which expert witnesses have previously described before this very subcommittee as a typical procedure in which a living human being is literally and brutally ripped to pieces limb by limb. When I served in the Louisiana legislature, I authored and passed a ban on the barbaric dismemberment abortion procedure in my state. Of course, the abortion lobby immediately challenged it in court. Over the past several months, we've all witnessed liberals in high political office move aggressively to further expand abortion rights, even after the point when an unborn child can clearly live outside the womb on its own. The United States, by the way, you should know, is one of only 7 nations, including North Korea and China, that allows elective abortions after 20 weeks, a practice that kills thousands of innocent babies every year. New York's Reproductive Health Act allows all abortions up to 24 weeks and expanded access for later abortions. There's proposed legislation in Virginia, as we all now know, that the bill's sponsor said would allow abortion even during labor. And Virginia Governor Ralph Northam infamously endorsed allowing physicians and mothers to let children die in some circumstances. When Senate Republicans in this Congress pressed for a vote on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, federal legislation that the House has passed in previous years that would simply require doctors to provide medical care to babies born alive after failed abortion procedures, incredibly, 45 Senate Democrats voted to block its further consideration and passage in the Senate. I stood in the back of the Senate chamber that night with dozens of our Republican colleagues, and we could not believe what we were watching. Mr. Chairman, this hearing is entitled Threats to Reproductive Rights in America, but rights must be accompanied by responsibilities. In this case, that responsibility includes our duty to protect unborn human beings. As the Declaration acknowledges, this is the first and most fundamental obligation of any civilized people. My own mother had just turned 17 when she and my father decided to choose life and allow me into the world, and I'm so grateful that they did. Countless millions of young women have made that same blessed choice, and their children are equally thankful. For women in vulnerable situations who have made the opposite decision and lived to regret it, I just want to say personally that you too are valued and loved, and that Creator who gave us our inalienable rights is so gracious that He offers hope, forgiveness, and redemption to every single one of us. I look forward to hearing from all of our witnesses here today, and we do thank you for your time. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent that the full committee members, Ms. Roby and Ms. Lesko, be allowed to sit on our subcommittee today.
Without objection, that will be done.
Thank you. I yield back.
I want to thank the ranking member for his statement. His positions are different from mine, but they're heartfelt and they're sincere.